The day Damien Moretti denied me in front of the entire world was the day I stopped believing that love could survive power. The flash of cameras was so bright it turned the ballroom into a storm of white light. Every few seconds, another burst exploded across the stage, reflecting off crystal chandeliers and polished marble floors. I stood near the back of the room with my hands clasped tightly in front of me, trying to ignore the uneasy feeling twisting inside my chest. Manhattan's most influential people filled the hall. Politicians, CEOs, investors, reporters, people who could shape headlines with a single phone call, and every one of them seemed focused on the man standing behind the podium. Damien looked exactly the way he always did when the world expected perfection from him. Impeccable navy suit, calm expression, shoulders straight, not a single sign of weakness. To everyone else, he looked untouchable. To me, he looked exhausted. I knew the faint shadows beneath his eyes. I knew the tension hidden behind his controlled posture. For 3 years, I had been the only person allowed to see the man behind the empire. The man who preferred late-night coffee runs over expensive restaurants. The man who secretly donated money to struggling schools without telling anyone. The man who once spent an entire weekend helping me paint my tiny apartment because he said home should feel like home. That man seemed very far away now. A reporter raised her hand. The room fell silent. Even from across the ballroom, I could hear the confidence in her voice. "Mr. Moretti, there have been rumors regarding your personal relationship with Claire Bennett. Would you like to comment?" My heart stopped. The silence stretched for 1 second, then 2. Damien's eyes moved across the crowd. For the briefest moment, they found mine. I expected reassurance, some small sign that everything would be okay. Instead, I saw something colder, something distant. His expression never changed. "Claire Bennett has no connection to me," he said. The words landed harder than I thought possible. Any rumors suggesting otherwise are completely false. Around me, reporters immediately began typing. Cameras clicked faster. Questions erupted across the room, but I heard none of them. My ears rang, my vision blurred. No connection to me. 3 years, thousands of memories, countless promises whispered during quiet moments when the world couldn't reach us. And now, I was nothing. I lowered my gaze before anyone could see the tears gathering in my eyes. My hand moved instinctively to my stomach. Nobody noticed. Nobody knew. Not the reporters, not the investors, not even Damien. I had discovered the truth only 3 days earlier, a truth that had completely changed my future. I was carrying his child. The realization hit differently now. Until this moment, I had imagined telling him. I had imagined his surprise, his smile, the way his eyes would soften when he learned he was going to be a father. Those dreams shattered beneath the weight of his words. Across the room, applause began as Damien moved on to another question. The empire had been protected, the headlines would be controlled, the rumors would disappear. Everything he had worked for remained intact. Except me. I quietly picked up my purse and walked toward the exit. Nobody stopped me. Nobody even noticed I was leaving. Outside, the cool October air wrapped around me as the sounds of the city echoed between skyscrapers. Yellow taxi lights blurred through my tears. Behind me, the gala continued as if nothing had happened, as if my entire world hadn't just collapsed. I stood on the sidewalk for a long moment before pulling out my phone. Damien's contact stared back at me from the screen. I looked at it for several seconds. Then I turned the phone off completely. That was the last day he ever saw me. I did not go home that night. Home no longer felt like a place. It felt like a collection of memories waiting to hurt me. The city blurred past the taxi window as I stared at the reflection of my own face. 28 years old, and somehow I felt 100. Times Square glowed in the distance like a different universe. Crowds moved beneath giant screens. Couples laughed on street corners. Life continued exactly as it had before. Only mine had changed. My driver asked twice for an address before I finally gave him one. Not my apartment, not anywhere Damien would think to look. I chose a small hotel near LaGuardia Airport, the kind of place business travelers used for a single night before catching an early flight. The room smelled faintly of fresh detergent and old carpet. A king-sized bed sat beneath a window overlooking a parking lot. Nothing about it felt special. That was exactly what I needed. I locked the door behind me and finally allowed myself to cry. Not dramatic sobs, not the kind shown in movies, just silent tears that refused to stop. I sat on the edge of the bed with one hand resting on my stomach. 3 days earlier, that gesture had filled me with hope. Tonight, it felt like a promise. A promise that no matter what happened next, I was no longer responsible only for myself. My phone remained off. It stayed off through the night and into the next morning. By sunrise, I had made my decision. The airport terminal buzzed with the familiar sounds of rolling suitcases, flight announcements, and exhausted travelers carrying coffee cups larger than their hands. I sat near gate B17 with a one-way ticket to Dublin folded inside my passport. My entire future fit into a single carry-on bag beneath my seat. 2 sweaters, a few family photographs, important documents. Everything else had been left behind. I watched planes lift into the gray morning sky and wondered if running away made me weak. Then I remembered Damien standing beneath those bright lights while the world watched. I remembered the certainty in his voice. The answer became simple. Sometimes leaving is not weakness. Sometimes it is survival. My phone remained off until boarding began. Curiosity finally got the better of me. I powered it on. The screen immediately exploded with notifications. Messages, missed calls, voicemails. Most came from reporters whose numbers I did not recognize. Some came from acquaintances asking if I was okay. Then I saw his name. Damien. 23 missed calls. My heart stumbled. I opened the messages before I could stop myself. "Claire, where are you? Claire, answer your phone. We need to talk. Please call me." None of them explained anything. None of them erased what happened. My eyes burned as another message arrived while I stared at the screen. "Claire, do not leave." For a moment, I nearly called him, nearly gave him the chance to explain. Then boarding was announced. Passengers began lining up. A little girl walked past, holding her father's hand. She smiled up at him, completely trusting that he would protect her. Something tightened inside my chest. I looked down at the newest message. Then I turned the phone off again. Permanently. By the time the aircraft reached 30,000 feet, New York had disappeared beneath a blanket of clouds. The skyline that had defined so much of my life was gone. The future ahead of me was uncertain, terrifying even. But as I rested my hand against my stomach and listened to the steady hum of the engines, one truth became clear. Damien Moretti might have chosen his empire. I was choosing our child. The first winter in Dublin arrived with endless rain and skies the color of steel. I learned quickly that starting over was not a single decision. It was 1,000 small choices made every day. Choosing not to check old headlines, choosing not to search Damien's name, choosing not to wonder whether he still thought about me at all. My apartment sat above a bakery on a narrow street lined with brick buildings and flower boxes. Every morning, the smell of fresh bread drifted through the floorboards and filled the tiny space before sunrise. It was not glamorous. It was not luxurious. But it was mine. For the first time in years, my life belonged entirely to me. I found work at a community arts center teaching painting classes to children. The pay barely covered expenses, but the laughter inside those classrooms healed parts of me that I thought were gone forever. The children never cared about scandals or headlines or powerful families. They only cared whether the colors were bright enough and whether the stories I told made them smile. Months passed, then more months. My stomach grew. My future became impossible to ignore. Some nights, fear kept me awake. I would lie in bed listening to rain tap against the windows and wonder whether I was doing the right thing. Every child deserved answers. Every child deserved a father. Yet whenever doubt appeared, I remembered that ballroom. I remembered standing there while the entire world watched me disappear from his life with a single sentence. That memory always silenced the uncertainty. Meanwhile, thousands of miles away, Damien was winning. At least that was what the newspapers said. Moretti Holdings expanded into new markets. Financial magazines placed him on covers. Business channels called him one of the most influential men in America. Every article painted the same picture: powerful, brilliant, untouchable. But photographs can lie. I learned that the day I accidentally saw an interview while waiting in a doctor's office. His face appeared on the television mounted near the reception desk. The reporter asked about future plans. Damien answered every question perfectly: calm, controlled, professional. Yet something about him felt different. The smile never reached his eyes. The confidence looked rehearsed. For the first time, he seemed tired. Truly tired. I looked away before the interview ended. Some wounds were not meant to be reopened. Spring arrived, carrying new life with it. On a quiet April morning, after hours that felt both endless and impossibly short, my son entered the world. The nurse placed him gently in my arms. He had a full head of dark hair, tiny fingers, a stubborn expression that appeared only minutes after birth. Tears blurred my vision as I stared down at him. The room disappeared. The fear disappeared. The loneliness disappeared. There was only him. Noah. The name came naturally, as if it had been waiting for us all along. When his small hand wrapped around my finger, I understood something important. My story with Damien had ended, but a new story had just begun. Over the next weeks, Noah filled every corner of my life. Sleepless nights became normal. Bottles lined the kitchen counter. Tiny blankets appeared in every room. Exhaustion followed me everywhere, yet I had never felt richer. Sometimes I caught glimpses of familiar features in his face, the shape of his jaw, the intensity in his eyes whenever he focused on something. Those moments hurt more than I expected, because no matter how far I traveled, part of Damien remained with us. One evening, as the sun disappeared behind the rooftops outside our apartment window, I rocked Noah gently to sleep and whispered a promise against his soft hair. I would protect him. I would love him. And no matter what happened next, I would make sure he never felt unwanted. 4 years passed faster than I thought possible. One day, Noah was taking his first steps across our apartment floor, and the next he was racing through the small park 3 blocks away with enough energy to power the entire city. He had inherited my curiosity and Damien's determination. It was a combination that kept me constantly exhausted and endlessly entertained. Dublin had become home in ways I never expected. The bakery downstairs still filled the mornings with the scent of warm bread. The owner still slipped extra pastries into Noah's hands whenever he thought I was not looking. The art center had expanded, and I now managed several programs for local children. Life was not perfect, but it was peaceful. That peace mattered more than anything. Noah knew nothing about New York, nothing about headlines or powerful families or public betrayals. To him, the world was simple. School, friends, soccer practice every Saturday morning, pancakes on Sundays, bedtime stories every night. Some evenings after I tucked him into bed, I would stand quietly in his doorway and watch him sleep. In those moments, I often wondered what Damien would think if he could see him. The question appeared less frequently than it once had, but it never disappeared completely. Certain memories have roots that run too deep. Across the ocean, Damien Moretti had become even more successful. I knew only because it was impossible not to know. His face appeared on magazine covers displayed in airport bookstores. Business articles praised his leadership. Television interviews called him one of the most influential men in the country. Every achievement seemed larger than the last. Yet something about the photographs always felt wrong. The smile looked practiced. The confidence looked rehearsed. Success surrounded him, but happiness never seemed to. One rainy afternoon while waiting outside Noah's school, I glanced at a newspaper someone had left on a nearby bench. Damien's picture filled nearly half the front page. He stood beside politicians and investors, shaking hands beneath bright lights. The headline celebrated another major expansion. Most people would have looked at that photograph and seen a man who had everything. I looked at it and saw someone who appeared completely alone. I folded the paper and left it behind. Some chapters were better left closed. A few weeks later, Noah and I spent Saturday afternoon at the park near the River Liffey. The air smelled of fresh grass after a morning shower. Children chased soccer balls across open fields while parents watched from benches beneath blooming trees. Noah kicked his ball toward me and laughed when I deliberately missed. His laugh always reminded me that joy could survive almost anything. After another pass, he suddenly stopped running. He stood still in the middle of the grass, staring at another family nearby. A little boy sat on his father's shoulders while both of them laughed at something only they understood. Noah watched them for several seconds. Then he turned toward me. His expression was thoughtful in a way that felt far too mature for a 4-year-old. "Mom?" he asked. "Yes?" He walked closer, carrying the soccer ball beneath one arm. "How come everybody talks about their dads at school?" The question hit harder than I expected. I forced a smile. "Lots of families are different, sweetheart." He nodded slowly. "I know." Then he looked down at the grass. "But who is my dad?" The sounds of the park faded around me. The laughter, the conversations, the distant traffic. Everything disappeared beneath the weight of that single question. Because for 4 years I had managed to avoid it. For 4 years I had convinced myself there would be more time. Standing there beneath a gray Irish sky, looking into eyes that resembled his father's more with every passing year, I realized that time had finally run out. That night, after Noah fell asleep, I sat alone by the apartment window watching rain slide down the glass. The city lights shimmered across the wet streets below, turning Dublin into a watercolor painting of gold and silver reflections. Normally, I loved evenings like this. Quiet evenings, predictable evenings. But Noah's question followed me everywhere. Who is my dad? 4 simple words. 4 words I had spent years avoiding. I wrapped both hands around a mug of tea that had already gone cold. Across the room, Noah's crayons remained scattered across the coffee table beside unfinished drawings of soccer fields and superheroes. Evidence of a childhood that still felt wonderfully innocent. Yet innocence never lasted forever. Children eventually asked questions. They deserved answers. The next morning, Noah climbed onto a kitchen chair while I made pancakes. He swung his legs beneath the table and hummed to himself while coloring on a sheet of paper. For several minutes, neither of us mentioned the conversation from the park. Then he looked up. "Did I make you sad yesterday?" The question broke my heart a little. "No, sweetheart. You got really quiet." I placed a plate in front of him and sat beside him. Sometimes grown-ups need a little time to answer important questions. He considered that carefully. "So it was an important question?" I nodded. "Yes." Noah took a bite of pancake before speaking again. "You can tell me later if you want." I smiled, but the guilt settled deeper inside me. Because the truth was not simple. The truth carried memories I had spent 4 years trying to bury. The following weeks passed with surprising normalcy. School, soccer practice, work at the arts center. Yet Noah's question lingered beneath everything. Occasionally he asked small follow-up questions. Did his father like sports? Was he tall? Did he live in Ireland? Each time I answered as honestly as I could without revealing everything. Then one Thursday afternoon, life changed without warning. It started with a photograph. Thousands of miles away, in a conference room overlooking Manhattan, Damien sat through another endless executive meeting. Financial reports covered the polished table. Advisors discussed international expansion. Lawyers reviewed contracts. By every measurable standard, he had everything he once wanted. Yet according to the assistant who had worked for him the longest, he had become quieter with each passing year. Less interested in celebrations. Less interested in success. More interested in work, because work distracted him from everything else. During a break between meetings, one of his executives returned from a trip to Ireland. The man carried his phone in one hand and casually showed photographs from his vacation. Castles, countryside, cafes, ordinary travel memories. Nobody paid much attention until one image appeared. A neighborhood festival. Children running through a small park. Families gathered beneath colorful tents. Damien almost looked away. Then he froze. The photograph had been taken accidentally from a distance. Most people would have missed it entirely, but Damien did not. A woman stood near a picnic table helping a little boy tie his soccer cleats. Her blonde hair moved in the wind. Her profile was unmistakable. Claire. The room disappeared. The conversation disappeared. 4 years vanished in an instant. His hand tightened around the phone. "Where was this taken?" he asked quietly. The executive looked confused. "Dublin. Why?" Damien never answered, because he was no longer looking at me. He was staring at the child beside me. A little boy with dark hair. A little boy with familiar eyes. A little boy who looked exactly like him. The first sign that something had changed came 3 days later. I was helping Noah finish a drawing at the kitchen table when my phone buzzed with a number I did not recognize. Normally, I ignored unknown calls. Years of living alone with a child had taught me caution. But something made me answer. "Hello?" Silence lingered for half a second. Then I heard a voice I had not heard in more than 4 years. "Claire." My entire body froze. The pencil slipped from my fingers and rolled across the table. Noah looked up from his drawing. I forced a smile and walked toward the window before speaking again. "How did you find me?" My voice sounded calmer than I felt. Outside, rain tapped softly against the glass. Inside, my heart felt like it had forgotten how to beat properly. Damien exhaled slowly. "I have been asking myself a different question. I closed my eyes. Even after all this time, I could still picture him perfectly. The steady voice, the careful control, the way he always sounded like he was carrying the weight of an entire world on his shoulders. "Which question?" I asked quietly. Another pause. Then came the words I had dreaded for years. "How old is he?" My grip tightened around the phone. Across the room, Noah remained focused on coloring a soccer field, completely unaware that his future had just collided with his past. I should have hung up. I should have ended the call immediately. Instead, I stared at my son and whispered the truth. 4. The silence that followed felt endless. When Damien finally spoke again, his voice sounded different, not powerful, not controlled. Human. 4 years. I heard the realization settle inside him. 4 birthdays, 4 Christmas mornings, 4 years of scraped knees, bedtime stories, school photos, laughter, tears, and milestones he had never witnessed. Things no amount of money could buy back. "Claire," he began. I stopped him immediately. "Do not." My reflection stared back at me from the dark window. Older now, stronger. Not the woman who had once waited for his approval. "You do not get to explain over the phone." Another long silence followed. Then he surprised me. "You are right." That answer caught me off guard. The Damien I remembered always had answers, always had strategies. Yet this version sounded uncertain, almost vulnerable. "I am already in Dublin," he said quietly. My breath caught. I turned toward the window and looked down at the street below, even though I knew I could not see him. "What?" "I landed this morning." My heart immediately began racing. 4 years. 4 years of distance. 4 years of silence. And now he was here. "You had no right." "I know." "You cannot just appear because you suddenly decide you want answers." "I know that too." The honesty in his voice only made me angrier, because anger was easier than remembering how much I once loved him. "Then what do you want?" I asked. The answer came instantly, no hesitation, no calculation. "I want to meet my son." Tears threatened unexpectedly. I hated that they did. I hated that part of me understood exactly what he was feeling. Across the room, Noah held up his drawing with a proud smile. "Mom, look." I forced myself to smile back. A beautiful soccer stadium filled the page. Tiny stick figures ran across the field beneath bright blue skies. A perfect world drawn by a child who still believed every problem had a solution. Damien heard Noah's voice through the phone. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, very quietly, he asked, "Does he know about me?" I looked at my son, then I remembered his question in the park. "Who is my dad?" My chest tightened. "No," I whispered, "but he is starting to ask." For the first time since the call began, Damien sounded afraid, and somehow that frightened me even more than his power ever had. For 3 days, I avoided making a decision. 3 days of unanswered messages. 3 days of pacing my apartment after Noah fell asleep. 3 days of telling myself that the past belonged in the past. But the problem with the past is that it rarely stays where you leave it. On the 4th day, I finally agreed to meet Damien. Not because I was ready to forgive him, not because I wanted answers. I agreed because Noah deserved the truth, even if I hated every step required to reach it. We chose a public park near the river, neutral ground, safe ground, somewhere bright and ordinary. The morning arrived wrapped in soft sunlight that reflected off the water. Families pushed strollers along the walking paths. Cyclists passed beneath rows of trees just beginning to bloom. Everything looked peaceful. My stomach felt anything but peaceful. Noah ran several feet ahead of me, carrying his soccer ball beneath one arm. He had no idea what was happening. To him, it was simply another Saturday morning. To me, it felt like standing on the edge of a cliff. Then I saw him. Damien stood near a bench overlooking the river. For a moment, I barely recognized him. The expensive clothes remained. The confident posture remained. But time had left its mark. There were faint lines near his eyes now, a heaviness around his shoulders. He looked older, not physically, emotionally, like someone who had spent years carrying regret. Our eyes met across the distance. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. Then Noah kicked his ball too hard. It bounced away across the grass, straight toward Damien. Before I could react, Damien stepped forward and trapped the ball gently beneath his shoe. Noah immediately chased after it. "Hey!" he called. "That is mine!" I almost laughed despite myself. Damien looked down at him. For the first time since I had known him, he seemed completely speechless. Noah stopped a few feet away and planted his hands on his hips. "Are you going to keep it?" Damien blinked once before slowly picking up the ball. "No." His voice sounded rough. "I think it belongs to you." Noah accepted the ball and examined him carefully. Children always noticed things adults missed. "You sound funny." Damien actually smiled, a real smile. The first genuine smile I had seen from him in years. "Do I?" "A little." Noah nodded seriously. "You are not from here." "No, I am not." They stood there looking at each other. Same dark hair, same eyes, same stubborn expression. The resemblance was almost painful to witness. Damien knew it too. I could see it in the way his gaze never left Noah's face. 4 years of absence compressed into a single moment. Then Noah asked the question that changed everything. "Are you lost, mister?" Damien laughed softly. Not the polished laugh used in interviews, something warmer, more human. "Maybe a little." Noah considered that answer. "My mom says people should ask for directions when they are lost." Damien's eyes lifted to mine. The look that passed between us carried 4 years of history, 4 years of mistakes, 4 years of silence. "Your mom sounds very smart," he said quietly. Noah grinned. "She is." Then he ran back toward a group of children gathering near the soccer field, leaving Damien and me standing alone for the first time since New York. Neither of us spoke immediately. We simply watched Noah disappear across the grass. Finally, Damien broke the silence. "He is amazing." I folded my arms. Protecting myself had become instinct. "You do not know him." His jaw tightened. "No." The honesty in that single word hurt more than any excuse could have. We stood there, watching our son play beneath the Irish sky. 2 strangers, connected by the one thing neither of us could deny anymore. And for the first time in 4 years, I realized the hardest conversation was still waiting for us. After our conversation by the river, I expected clarity. Instead, I felt more conflicted than ever. For 4 years, I had survived by believing a simple story. Damien chose his empire. I chose our son. That belief had helped me move forward. It had helped me build a life from the ruins of another. But now the story was changing. The problem was that understanding his reasons did not erase my pain. Some nights I lay awake staring at the ceiling long after Noah had fallen asleep. I replayed every word Damien had said. I replayed every memory from New York, every promise, every disappointment, every moment that had led us here. 1 week later, Damien asked to see me alone. Not Noah, just me. The request sat unanswered on my phone for 2 days. Eventually, I agreed. We met at a small cafe overlooking the river. The afternoon sky hung low and gray above the city. Rain tapped softly against the windows, while people hurried along the sidewalks outside. Damien was already there when I arrived. He stood as I approached the table. The gesture was familiar. Once it would have made my heart race. Now it only reminded me how much time had passed. "Thank you for coming," he said quietly. I sat down across from him. "Say what you need to say." He nodded slowly. For several seconds, he seemed to search for the right words. Then he reached into the inside pocket of his coat and placed something on the table between us. A small, velvet box. My chest tightened immediately. I recognized it. 4 years disappeared in an instant. "I carried this with me the day of the press conference," he said. My eyes remained fixed on the box. "Damien, I was going to ask you to marry me." The words hit harder than I expected. Not because I had never imagined them, because once upon a time I had, many times. He slowly opened the box. Inside sat the ring I had never seen. A simple diamond surrounded by delicate details I instantly recognized. Tiny engraved paintbrushes hidden within the design. A tribute to my love of art. Tears threatened before I could stop them. "I had it made months before everything happened," he continued. "I thought I had time." Silence stretched between us. Then anger returned, sharp, immediate, necessary. "You had time," my voice trembled. "You had years." Damien looked down. "I know. You do not get credit for a proposal that never happened." "I know. You do not get credit because you suffered too." His jaw tightened. "I know." The tears finally escaped despite my efforts. "You missed everything." My voice broke completely. His first birthday, his first words, his first day of school, every time he was sick, every time he was scared. Damien closed his eyes. For the first time since arriving in Dublin, he looked completely defeated. "I know." The words sounded painful because they were true, yet the truth changed nothing. 4 years remained gone. Some losses could never be recovered. I stood up. "I cannot do this." Damien rose immediately. "Claire." I shook my head. "No." My voice steadied. "Understanding why you hurt me does not mean I am ready to forgive you." His expression fell, but he nodded. "That is fair." "I need more than explanations." I wiped away a tear. "Noah deserves more than explanations." Then I walked away. This time Damien did not stop me. He did not argue. He did not chase after me. For the next several weeks, he never once mentioned forgiveness again. Instead, he simply showed up. Soccer games, school events, weekend walks, science projects. Every promise made to Noah was kept. Every commitment honored. Slowly, without speeches or pressure, he began proving something far more important than regret. He was proving that he intended to stay. Summer slowly gave way to autumn. The leaves along the river turned shades of gold and amber, and the mornings grew colder. Life settled into a new rhythm, though not the one Damien wanted. He had become part of Noah's life. That much was undeniable. Every Saturday morning he stood on the sidelines during soccer practice. Every school event found him sitting in the audience. Every promise made to Noah was kept. Yet despite all of that, a wall remained between us. I was polite, respectful, grateful when it came to Noah, but nothing more. The old version of me might have mistaken effort for redemption. The woman I had become knew better. Consistency mattered more than apologies. One evening, Noah and I returned home to find a package waiting outside our apartment door. There was no note attached. Inside was a framed photograph from Noah's school art exhibition. I remembered the day clearly. Noah had proudly shown off a painting of our family standing beside the river. 3 figures beneath a bright blue sky: me, Noah, Damien. On the back of the frame, a single sentence had been written in neat handwriting. "Thank you for letting me be part of the picture." Nothing else. No request, no pressure, no mention of forgiveness. I stared at those words for a long time. Weeks passed, then months. Damien never stopped showing up. Not when work called him back to New York, not when meetings piled up, not when flying across the Atlantic every week became exhausting. He adapted his schedule around Noah instead of expecting Noah to adapt to him. Sometimes he arrived late at night and flew home the next morning. Sometimes he attended a 30-minute school presentation and immediately returned to the airport afterward. For the first time, I saw a man rearranging his world instead of asking everyone else to rearrange theirs. One rainy November afternoon, Noah came home from school carrying a family assignment. He dropped his backpack near the door and ran into the kitchen. "Mom, we have homework." I laughed. "You are excited about homework? This one is fun." He spread several sheets of paper across the table. The project asks students to create a family story using photographs and memories. Noah immediately began sorting through pictures: birthdays, soccer games, school events. Then he stopped. "We need a picture together. We already have plenty." He shook his head. "Not all of us." I knew exactly what he meant. A few days later, we met at the Christmas market near the city center. Strings of lights glowed above crowded streets. Holiday music drifted through the cold evening air. Noah insisted on taking photographs at every opportunity. Eventually, he handed his camera to a passerby and ran back toward us. "Everybody smile." Damien stood beside me, not touching, not assuming, simply waiting. The camera flashed. A simple moment. Nothing dramatic. Yet when I looked at the image afterwards, something unexpected happened. For the first time in years, the picture did not look incomplete. Later that evening, after Noah fell asleep, I found myself standing alone on the apartment balcony. The city shimmered beneath thousands of lights. Behind me, the balcony door opened quietly. Damien stepped outside. Neither of us spoke at first. We simply watched the city. Finally, I broke the silence. "You never asked again." He looked at me. "Asked what?" "For another chance." A faint smile touched his face. "Because I finally understood something." I waited. Love is not something you earn with speeches. His voice was calm, honest. It is something you prove with time. Emotion tightened my chest. Months earlier, those words would not have mattered. Now they did. Because he had lived them. Every single day. I looked out across the city lights one last time before turning back toward him. "I am still angry sometimes." He nodded. "I know." Some days I still remember that press conference. I know. Tears filled my eyes unexpectedly. And some days I remember everything that came before it. For a moment, neither of us moved. Then, slowly, I reached for his hand. Not because the past had disappeared. Not because the pain had never happened. But because healing had finally become stronger than the hurt. And for the first time in a very long time, the future felt bigger than the mistakes that almost destroyed it.